Hello, everybody. I'm Dan TCV, the criminal. Anyway, I'm that person. Yeah. I haven't recorded a damn thing for, I believe, now over a month. To be fair, because first it was, I don't know exactly what it was I was doing originally. It was something that either I was going on a downturn, I wasn't feeling good, or like mentally and emotionally, or I was just tired or something. I can't freaking remember. But then we got hit with the news that my brother had died, my oldest brother, and he apparently had died in a intensely gruesome way, taking himself out is what it seems. That uh, would be something straight out of a freaking thriller or horror movie. It's like crazy. And then, so we had to deal with that, and we had dealt with trying to get a hold of him for since the 8th or 9th, because he had just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth and nobody could get in contact with him. His phone wasn't working or anything like that. Nobody can answer his door. So we're pretty sure he officially took himself out and departed on the 9th of March. So that's something we were dealing with. And then, of course, technically we're still dealing with. And then we had, as of, I believe, the 29th, I believe, is when my grandma, my mom's mom, died. So her firstborn and then her mom died within like 20 days in fact, literally 20 days of each other, probably, which is absurd and insane to think about. So that's where I've been, because it's just been wild how things have been going. And of course, I mentioned the whole ninth thing because, one, it's very likely the case when he officially took himself out, but on top of that, there is this thing where, because apparently, which human bodies should not be able to decay that intensely fast, but he, under any conditions for that matter, but he apparently, according to the ME, the medical examiner for Multnomah County, he was so incredibly decomposed that they figured he had been dead 1 to 2 weeks at least. And that would put it right in that time zone too. But so because of this decomposition, when they found him on the 19th, yeah, it's that definitely didn't help in matters, especially considering he had clearly exploded, which is what bodies do once they get. It's usually about, I think it's usually 3 to 5 days after somebody or anything dies, the abdomen explodes because of all the gases and methane from the decomposition that builds up. So my mom and sister ended up going to clean up the room because they had to get his paperwork and all the other stuff for all the legal work afterward and all that. And so they got to see the remnants of everything on the walls and on his bed and everything. Blood, dried, coagulated piles and big puddles of blood all over the floor and room in places and under the bed. And his quote-unquote ooze is what my mom is calling it from his decay. Black, sticky goop all over his bed. And just the blood spatters and stuff everywhere. And anyway, yeah, so it's dramatic. So it's just stuff we have to deal with right now. We've been going through, but I'm finally in a place, in a better position where I feel like now I'm able to officially start to do at least a little bit of stuff. So I'm looking to do a political commentary, I guess, for April, because I'm, especially as late as it is in the month, I'm probably gonna not try to catch up by doing 2. So we're just gonna do 1, and I feel like I'm in a happy and calm enough place, of course, today as well, to be able to actually go through and do that. So I'm going to take the opportunity that I have at the moment here this afternoon to do so. Also, if I start to look like I'm getting like sweaty or something in this, it's because of the fact that it's summer weather in spring in Northwest Oregon, because that makes total freaking sense. Because it's in the 80s out there today and crystal clear. And I'm somebody who does not have a track record that is anything but lethargy ridden with heat. So anyway, with that preface and knowledge shot out of the way for you all, let's get to the topic today. So, the United States has always been a nation that, throughout its history, has been industrious, and not in the typical way that people would think of it as, including literally thinking of the United States as, let alone thinking of what they think of and feeling the things they do when they think of being industrious and industriousness, especially as a personal value for somebody. Usually it's seen as a pretty generally positive and good thing. It means usually good work ethic and good initiative, ability to notice opportunities to seize that'll help them make more gains in their line of work or whatever, get promotions, that stuff, make innovations, etc. But in the United States' case, that's not at all what it is. When I say the United States has always been industrious, what I mean is it's been, let's say, predatorily industrious throughout its entire existence, to where they literally sought out complete and utter dictation and control of the entirety of the world and all people within it, specifically from corporate and company levels and down, so the industries, the commercial and industrial world. And you control the commercial world if you, and everybody else that relies on it, which is literally everybody, if you can, well, almost everybody, if you can control that of the resources, the source, the foundations of where you're even able to have a commercial world be birthed in the first place, as in be able to produce something. You have to have the resources in order to make and produce whatever it is you're making. And that's what the United States has always aimed for. The industrial half of it, the production and extraction of resources, the exploitation of resources. They've capitalized predatorily on it by completely taking total control over two predominant major resources and all related things with it. That is petroleum and there's oil and all of its associated things, and of course copper and all of its associated things and products and industries. And it's always sought to take total control over all of that, even if it means throwing all of their mercenaries, aka armed forces, at whatever nations are trying to resist the United States taking over their entire economies and controlling and dictating them from then on out, including with and literally by military force. For oil, it's almost always been the Middle East, especially when it comes down to Iraq and Iran. And then for copper, the most predominant and raw memory and instance of them doing that is with Chile back in the 70s and Salvador Allende's assassination, and then putting into power, that was the entire point, frickin' dictatorial Pinochet into his seat of power to control Chile, and then go on a genocidal mission directly alongside of him, genociding with him and his army all of these people that were supposedly endangering their democracy. In other words, endangering his complete and total fucking dictation and control. As in anybody who was even thought to have said or believed anything that could have possibly have been, sincerely that of, Salvador Allende's loyalists or anything like that. Basically anybody who would want a different policy or a different future for their nation. For for Chile, since we're talking about that, I won't go back to Iraq and Iran for examples. With Chile, what pissed off the United States and made them go down there and militaristically assassinate Salvador Allende, and then completely install their own little figurehead dictator in Pinochet, and then in fact be willing to go out and just slaughter in mass, just literally millions and millions of Chilenos, was because of the fact that they were quote unquote socialist. Which in reality, what that term means to them is they aren't doormats. They don't just let us walk over them and take complete control of their economies, because Salvador Allende understood that that was obviously not a good thing, and it doesn't help anybody in their nation if they can't control their own fucking resources. That's kind of how nations work. It's their business and their choice to do what with they will, what they want with their own resources. I mean, that's literally the source of their fucking economy, is a nation's resources. That's fucking straightforward as hell. That's obviously, I mean, it's blatant, right? So, and he knew that the United States had pretty much in fact, did have complete control over their entire industry, predominantly that is copper, because Chile has always been, and especially then, was heavily rich in copper. And copper is considered a rare earth metal, so of course, you gotta control that, because that's a lot of fucking money. And so what he did was he recognized that, and he kicked out, and I don't know if he made it illegal, but at least he kicked out all of these different Americans who either had stakes and or owned these copper mining companies and shipping companies in Chile. He completely kicked them out of the nation and gave the control over to citizens of the companies and stuff like that actually knew how the industry worked, and that were, of course, native, born and raised Chilenos, so that way they could take control of their economy again. And out of, the United States' sticky, grubby little fingers. And so that's what he did. He kicked out the United States and all their little elitist minions, took control back of their economy, and then the United States said, no, we need to have complete control. And no matter what it takes, we're going to slaughter, if we have to slaughter millions of your people, to make sure that we have complete control over all of your economy. It's as the United States always does. And so, of course, that's when they decided Pinochet was going to be put into power. They then put him in because he's supposedly a U.S. loyalist. And then he went and decided to commit mass genocide after they murdered Salvador Allende in his office, claimed it was suicide, as the U.S. government loves to do. To this day, they still say that. It's like, oh, they committed suicide. They hung themselves. They shot themselves. They insert whatever suicide thing here. It's always a cliche, like one of main 3 stories behind the supposed suicide. They do that to doctors now. It's fucking stupid. But anyway, so in other words, they murdered him in cold blood, of course. And then that's what the United States always has done. And then they, of course, go and they, right alongside of Pinochet and his army, they have the United States military go out, and government, and gleefully go and slaughter in mass millions of Chilenos alongside of Pinochet and his armies. All in the name of crushing communism and installing democracy and crushing tyranny, am I right? Oh wait, that's the rebranding of what it used to be, which was killing commies. And then before that it was, for glory and for, what is it called? Manifest Destiny. And they always have a fucking narrative. They always have a scripted, blueprinted catchphrase. And it's literally a fucking advertising tagline. That's what it is. It's branding. To get war support, is what was always called back in the day. I don't know what the fuck they call it now. From you, the average citizenry. Go figure. Overexposure's bugging me, sorry. So, now with that out of the way and said, and that exemplification of that jump forward, we can move back to Iraq and Iran. Now, with their examples, ever since really the 70s and 80s, the United States has been heavily involved in controlling the oil trade in Iraq and Iran. Best example you can get for the United States doing the similar thing to Chile that they did with Chile in the 70s is, go figure, 9/11. Yes, September 11th, 2001. You see, yes, it was a false flag attack, and it was in fact therefore an inside job. That's what false flags are. See, false flag attacks are always used by a nation on themselves, as in they attack themselves. That's why they call it a false flag, because they throw out a false flag, in this case, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and even Afghanistan, although admittedly they didn't want to admit, and they didn't actually say anything about Saudis being the ones behind it, supposedly, if there was a plane, but there was a bunch of Saudis on these supposed planes, which there was no planes. That's a fact too, by the way. They will never tell you that, and everybody will tell you there was absolutely planes, especially people who were there that day. The reason why you can't believe a word out of the people's mouths who were there around the Twin Towers and at the Twin Towers is because they were all so deeply traumatized and affected that and impacted that in that very moment. What the human brain does, and it's a basic primitive instinctual mechanism in our heads, is it compensates. What it does is it blocks out everything that's extremely traumatic. It completely blips out of existence, blocks it out, does not allow it to exist in the memory of the person's head. So what happens is, then psychologically, governments with their false flags, that when they do that kind of a thing, is they come in with a fabricated story. It literally does not matter how illogical the story is, the people will inevitably believe it because their brain still needs familiarity. That's how the human brain works, which is also why humans are so fucking gullible and stupid. Because our brains require familiarity as a material, physical thing. Shut up. Material, physical thing to connect to, recognize, and familiarize, there it is, with itself, in order to believe it to be true and real. If it doesn't have that, what do we always say? Oh, it's impossible. And you just dismiss it, and then you think anybody who believes it is possible is fucking out of their gourd. That's because it's your human brain talking and doing the work for you. Because it's doing the work by saying, I'm willing to do the work, because I can't understand and comprehend what the fuck this is, because, well, I'm not familiar with anything that is related to this, so it can't be possible. Boom, and it's dismissed, and end of story, doesn't want to touch it. So, It still needs familiarity, though. It still needs something, therefore, to familiarize itself with physically and connect the story dots with. It doesn't. Your brain does not want to leave just a blank space. It does sometimes if push comes to shove and the story's not fabricated. But in this case, that's why it does not need logic, whatever story you're giving. The people who suffered that trauma will automatically, their brains will fill it in with whatever you're telling at that point. Especially considering your brain cannot be more gullible and easily influenced at any point in your life other than when you're deeply traumatic. You've experienced something deeply traumatic. And that's exactly what the United States government, of course, did. They didn't even try. They just gave the most bullshit fucking story ever that doesn't make any logical sense, knowing these people who were deeply traumatized would believe it to the day they fucking died, and they would be vigilante about making sure that you were, tearing people apart who don't believe in the planes or whatever existed there. Fact is, they weren't there. Different story. And if anybody wants the fucking sources, and you really do, you are going to do the work yourself by looking it up for yourself. You're going to have to do a hell of a lot of digging on Google search because it is intensely hard to find. It's there. I stumbled across it and found it by doing that one day, dedicating hours just flipping through the pages until I finally found this webpage that was literally a complete archive of all the photographs, all the little supposed video clips that they got, all these different things from each of the different sites, compiling all these different footage from citizens that captured the actual goings on from before the first tower collapsed all the way through to after that extra building. I can't remember what building that was. That one that's like, what was it, like 2 or 4 stories tall? The base and off to the right of I believe the second tower. That randomly collapsed, I think, a day later. And it was in perfect shape, supposedly. And they're like, just, cool. Doesn't make any sense, but don't think about it. And it'll make sense. See, I got it down pat. Anyway, point is, that's what a false flag attack is. And that's why they do that. Because they're desperate for war support. And nobody wanted to support yet another fucking war. They just supposedly got out of the Gulf War and the Cold War. And then, of course, even during the Cold War, there was the Vietnam War, which also was the first official false flag attack that the United States did on themselves. That false flag attack, I believe, is the one that was called Project Northwoods. That was them basically testing it out for the first time properly, so they could get war support for Vietnam. And then before that, of course, was the Korean War. And then before that, of course, just before it, in fact, was, of course, the World War II. Just before that, of course, was World War I. In other words, literally, the United States had not stopped being in these massive fucking wars for well over 100 years, or just about 100 years at least. And so the United States desperately wanted to find war support because they were pissed the fuck off. Like, the United States has never been more livid in their existence, the government, than when Iraq and Iran, just 2 weeks before 9/11 happened, switched from the United States dollar, as in the petrol dollar, right, or petrodollar, to the euro in their oil trade. You don't do that to the United States. That's pretty much their entire fucking economy. And you're trying to take it from them. That's their fucking global control. That's their literal reason for how they control the entire world, economically, and thus even politically, is literally by the complete control and dictation of all the major world's oil hubs, resource havens, as well as the copper ones. If they didn't have that, the United States' economy would be probably down by a third. The third of it just would suddenly not exist. Which leads me into the next thing. Oh, wait. By the way, remember, there is this supposed mysterious $8 trillion That is 8 trillion in 2001 money. 8 trillion, mysterious $8 trillion. The United States government just suddenly and out of nowhere conveniently lost track of. That they're still to this day supposedly trying to figure out where it went and hunt it down. Also, a week after Iraq and Iran swapped from the US dollar to the euro in their oil trade, and a week therefore before 9/11 happened. A week before 9/11 happened, and a week after they switched. 9/11 was supposedly the catalyst that got the United States to decide they needed to declare war on Iraq and Iran the first time before they shifted their narrative to weapons of mass destruction, which of course, go figure. Guess what else never actually happened and existed? Yeah, that. Can't you see the correlations here? So, $8 trillion just gone to the wind. Nah, it totally just randomly disappeared. Absolutely no logic thinking that it is possibly a reason why $8 trillion would happen to go missing randomly a week before, with reason rather, before, a week before something like a massive self-caused and self-done attack on themselves did. Oh, wait. Seriously. How can you be so fucking gullible and stupid? Anyway. So now, that leads me to, economically, the literal thing that without it, the United States would virtually have zero economy and thus zero world power whatsoever. And that is the military-industrial complex. As in, the war machine, the corporate war machine that is the United States of America. That is what it is. That is what this country is. It's a fucking corporate war machine. It's the Iron Giant on fucking steroids. That's what it is. Which is ironic because guess what? Once, like the last political video I said, Joseph Stalin's laughing somewhere in his grave or beyond the grave at so fucking aggressively right now, saying I fucking called it. In other words, you're becoming exactly what you said you swore to kill and swore to hate, as in the USSR. Interesting. Yet, I'm talking about the Iron Giant. It's like a Iron Giant on steroids times 1,000. Well, guess what the Iron Giant was? Have you ever watched the movie? He was a Soviet war machine. Look at that! Like a script. Once again, the United States is literally an Iron Giant on every fucking steroid in existence, but like, that are 1,000 times stronger than, you would be able to take without dying. That's what the United States is in regards to a corporate war machine. So, the United States military-industrial complex is literally worldwide, global, and has stupid amounts of control. In every single war in the world that will ever happen will make the United States trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars. That is the United States government, not the people, of course, obviously. What, you think that they care about? Oh, come on. Americans should know by now. The government and politicians will never give a fuck about the little man. They'll never give a fuck about anybody but themselves. And their little puppet show for us. That's it. That's all they'll ever give a fuck about. Themselves. That's it. And of course money. You think that they'd ever give a fuck about you? You need to fucking grow up and grow a fucking brain and start to actually pay a fucking attention, because you've had nearly 250 years worth of this fucking shit. And you're still like, no, I still think the government and politicians truly care. You have issues and you need some mental help right now. That's not an insult. I'm just making a statement and a recommendation. Sincerely, in fact. You really clearly need some help. Anyway, that said, yeah. So if the United States' military-industrial complex suddenly was gone and collapsed, the United States probably wouldn't even exist because of the fact it would not have even an economy. And so on that front, the way the United States makes so much money off of wars, including when the United States is at war with somebody or in a war with somebody, they make money off of their own fucking use of their own fucking war weapons, war machine. Which is fucking mental. Like, that doesn't even make any fucking sense. But they do. It's fucked up. So, it's like a self-profiting scheme. While also, of course, they don't have to do it because they still make hundreds of trillions of dollars, probably a year per every war that exists. And there's a fuckload of them. They make the profits because, of course, the initial profits, which isn't the profits they give a fuck about because it's nothing compared to what they make when they use these weapons and these machines in war, is the initial profits they make, right, is they sell the tanks, the planes, the bombers, the ships. They sell all of that. They sell all the different munitions, whether they're missiles, bombs, gases, artillery, literally guns, no matter what. The United States government makes tens of trillions, if not hundreds of trillions of dollars, and that's just the little bit, the pocket money that they get from it that they don't give a fuck about. But it's because of those sales, and then all these different nations around the world using their weapons, their machines, their vehicles, their, all of their war stuff, that their armaments, I guess I should say, that every war that they're used in, they make, every bullet that's fired, that's made in the U.S. makes the U.S. a lot of money. So, literally war profiteering. And that's another really old term that has kind of died out around the early 1800s, but it's still ever present today, is war profiteering. The United States makes trillions of dollars off of wars. And you gotta remember something. How is it that the United States has always enforced their complete global dictation and control over the global economy, and thus all these other nations' economies that have a lot of oil resources and or a lot of copper resources? Via war. They go to war there. They go to war against them. They, in any capacity they can, insert military presence again. Why do they do it? So they can prop up their war machine that they are, as in their military industrial complex. It's literally a self-fulfilling economy. So if one of those falls, the other one no longer has a point for existing. Though, if the control falls in terms of the oil and all that stuff, there's no doubt in my mind that it would still be able to function as it is and still make them turn tens of trillions of dollars. That is the war machine. It would be just like a really inconvenient formality, especially in terms of looks and global presence, in terms of the perception of the United States as military and all other forms of power. And that's just not acceptable, of course. That's absolutely terrible. I mean, whatever will Americans, our average Americans do without that pride and prestige they can take in slaughtering tons of people and controlling other nations' economies, because that's apparently fucking great. It's apparently protecting freedoms and smashing out tyranny. Well, protecting our nation. Oh, wait, it's not. It's the complete opposite. But, gotta believe what they advertise to you. It's literally advertisements. I mean, fucking now, I'll watch a frickin' basketball game, and the ad, they'll have the fucking Marines ad talking about how, all this shit that is, you live through is really an illusion, and the only way you can find your way out of the illusion and make something of your life is if you go out and slaughter tons of people or work in support for that, as in becoming a fucking armed forces member, in this case, the Marines. The Army has something similar, except the Army wants to make it out, because you're infantry at that point, it's made out to be like, oh yeah, firing and killing people and bombing and shelling places. Now that, it's just a video game. It's a lot of fucking fun, and you're protecting your nation and your family and your freedoms and smashing out tyranny by doing it. You're a great person. No, you're a fucking serial killer and or an accomplice to serial killers. That's what you really are. There's a reason why you're called a mercenary. It's just that, just like everything else, right? Like the United States has rebranded why it needs to go to war. It rebrand what war is, right? Now it's crushing out, stamping out tyranny and, restoring law and order and justice to these war-torn nations. It's all about installing democracy and making it a wonderful place to live. No, it's about fucking killing. That's all war's ever been about. The more bodies you can rack up, the more slaughter you can commit, the more bloodshed you cause, and the more destruction and decimation of entire livelihoods and cities and of nations you can get. Whoever gets the most of that is always declared the winner of a war, because it's literally a game. And in that regard, because that's basically the premise of how games work, obviously, and it's a competition. Who can get the most destruction and decimation of life? Whoever gets it is declared winners of wars. It's all about destruction. That's all it is. And of course, therefore, complete power and control. That's why, like I said in the last video, and I think even I mentioned a couple of the other political video I did, that it's all about destabilization. The more unstable a nation is, the better it is for the nation that had colonized them and then released them into independence. Because then they have inevitable power, control, and influence over that nation and what directions they go and what they're able to do and not do and how good or bad they get. They want you to be unstable so that way they have an excuse to always say, see, you need us. In other words, we're going to keep control over you. We're going to keep our thumb down over your tiny little squabbling, squealing little self until you finally get tired and say, okay, we'll do what you say. Good, okay. But no, we're kidding. We're just going to loosen the grip a little bit. We're still going to keep our thumb on you. Got to keep you in check. And so it's all about power control, of course. But I digress. So, now all of that out of the way, and all of that said, that leads me to another point. So, basically, in the end, with all of that, what that means is everything the United States does, and this is true with pretty much any nation, especially major nation in the world, it's all about advertising. How you advertise it, how you present it to the populace and the people, what your narrative is, and how you brand it, how you make it perceived, how you word it, how you even make it presented visually. That's all it's about. So that's why you'll always find everything's always been the same. It's just gets tweaked. It gets rebranded. The words get changed and rearranged, and the images shown are slightly different. The tone and the direction of it is always adjusted and adapted depending on when something stops working or at least slows down and how well it works. They then rebrand and regroup. Rebrand it, basically have a meeting, and then redo all it all. So they re-increase the support and making their citizens think, oh, this is a great thing, when they know it's not. I guess it's probably more, always, as usual, about taking more control and power away from you. But they disguise it now as freedom and stuff like that. It's like, okay. So it's all about branding is the point, right? Every bit of this has always been branding. That's why when you're armed forces were literally referred to in what we always called, and thus are, mercenaries, mercs. That's what you are if you're an armed forces member. In any capacity, no matter what your job is. Even if you're staying at home on a base and you're watching, computer screens, monitoring situations, monitoring where people are going, or doing the communications with the Pentagon or something, or doing media relations. Or even if you're in the Corps of Engineering in the Army and you're out there staying at home and all you're doing is doing dam work and all this other shit, you're still an accomplice to serial killing because you're still a mercenary. And you're expendable. That's always been the way mercenaries are. That's why you're the one that they recruit to do the dirty work and the murdering and all this other shit, the hard labor for them. Because there's no way a politician is going to do that, and there's certainly no way a global elite would ever touch that kind of shit. They're all about the complete opposite life. So of course they're going to do that. And plus, hey, if you go to war for them, that blood's on your hands. You're responsible for those deaths and anything, a war crime that happens, not the government, not the people in control. See, because they didn't touch a gun, they didn't touch a weapon, they didn't look at the systems, they didn't communicate, they didn't do anything. They're just sitting at home fat and happy, rich as fuck, controlling them, pulling the strings, the politicians, putting on shows. That's what all they've been doing. So you can't hold them responsible. It's your fault. You did it. It's all on you. Because you're the one with the gun. You're the one with the fatigues. You're the one with the boots, the helmets, the armor. You're the one driving the tank. You're the one shooting the missiles. You're the one making the communications and watching where the troops and people are. You're the one who's watching where the planes are going, and the helicopters and the bombers and the ships, and not them. So it's strictly on you, fully responsible for anything that goes south. They don't have to own up to anything because they didn't do anything. And the worst part is, technically, that's true. But that's why you exist. That's why armed forces exist. That's why militaries exist. That's why all of that exists. Because you're a mercenary and a means to an end. You're a tool being used to go and do what they want you to do. Do the work for them, and so they can't be held responsible because they technically didn't do anything, and technically, unfortunately, that's true. So it's on you. You're a henchman. That's what you are. But you're so fucking gullible and dumb, you fucking fell for it. And what's worse is so many of these other people still believe that they didn't fall for anything, and that they seriously are great people, and that they did wonderful things, and they really served their nation. No, they didn't. You're a serial killer or accomplice too. Be honest with yourself. That's all you're there for. To do dirty work. And you're expendable. Again, don't forget that. You die, oh cool, you have a little symbolic gesture, oh maybe you have a Medal of Honor, or you have a Purple Heart put on your coffin, or oh look at that, you have a piece of cloth with dye in it called a flag draped over a piece of wood carved out to be what's called a coffin. Aw, and you have your name on a piece of stone. Nothing better. Oh wait, that's right, it means jack shit. It's symbolic. Symbology is literally nothing. It's just air. It doesn't exist. And that's the fucking point. Because you don't fucking matter to them. You never will. You're expendable. Remember that. That's why you're there. Because if you get killed, don't make it give a fuck about that. Because they are the ones getting hurt or killed. And they're the ones that are going to be held responsible when you fuck up. Or keep doing that, and the world might actually come against war. You are. It's really as simple as that. So yes, all about rebranding. And that officially, now actually really brings me to the last and final topic and the set of points I want to make. All of that's rebranding. So, with the outbreak of this massive, supposedly so dangerous and deadly, be terrified, be fearful! Rely on them to give you such strength and to protect you from people who are not vaccinated, or, won't wear the masks. Oh dear me, your grandmother's going to die now of COVID. Ever since this whole freaking C-void COVID thing, I already said it's not going to matter anyway. Probably this entire thing, all the political things, I'm sure, because they don't align with the fucking leftist narrative of Google and all these other technocratic organizations. None of these would be monetizable at any point anyway. If and when I ever get to be able to monetize shit on this channel. So fuck it. I'm not gonna censor or get rid of anything. So yeah, ever since the COVID thing, I suppose evil pandemic broke out, which is totally not orchestrated and totally not intentionally released as a experimental bioweapon to see how well it works. Government definitely had nothing to do with it. I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, fuck off. Yeah, so, point being, ever since it came out, suddenly, really quickly, mass shootings, virtually nothing, if anything at all, reported about nationally, specifically. Just nothing happened, really. Instead, it was quiet, and then Black Lives Matter things happened. So one thing happened, and it was, instead of mass shooting, it was suddenly George Floyd. Okay. All of that shit happens. Okay, cool. Then it seems like it might be slowing down, and then a bunch of shit happens where now it's the other side of the fence politically that's extreme as well. QAnon and the hardcore, zealot Trump supporters that, not all of them, but there was obviously, in fact, probably the majority of them weren't those people, but there was those people there. And just like Antifa and not all, but a lot of Black Lives Matter people do, they want to make a show of it because they love the fucking media attention. They want the media attention, and they want to do it so that also they can make their points made and show that they're serious about the issues that they find the most prominent and problematic that they need to fix in society. Yeah. In reality, it's just they don't give a fuck. But different story. They're just showboats. But anyway, that said, then clashes supposedly happen, and then that goes quiet. Then you have more localized things that did eventually, after about a month, make national news. And that was in December, things like here in Oregon, there was supposedly an insurrection into the state capitol during an assembly session. Evil right-wingers, am I right? If you watch the videos and everything, they weren't violent. There was a few people that got, clearly the way they were being treated got under their skin, and they started to get, fairly irrational in terms of emotions. They started to get really hyper-expressive and a little bit pushy, but they weren't violent. In fact, I watched all sorts of perspectives and videos, whether it was media or it was other people. It was docile. In fact, that's probably one of the most laid-back sessions I've ever seen. I mean, the people outside, when that senator of ours that Republican senator had walked out, or congressman, whichever one it was, walked out of the building where all the people in the crowd was. Supposedly left the door open so they could get a foot in the door and get in. Then walked around, and 4 minutes later went back on the other side of the building and re-entered the building. Didn't actually do anything. He literally just walked around the building. Maybe he was trying to let him in. Who the hell knows? Anyway, the point being, it wouldn't matter to me anyway, but the point being is, okay, cool. If you watch the video before that and even after that, those people were super calm. They were so quiet too. They were just leaning back and chilling, whether like this, like cops, right, under their vests, which I just realized I'm kind of doing. I just need to do the thumb thing here, but just chill. They're just pretty relaxed. I mean, sure, maybe they're annoyed, exasperated, impatient, bored, whatever, trying to figure out what to do next. But they're there, and it's not that big of a crowd either. I think they said there was thousands of people, but if you look, there was easily not even 100 at peak. There was probably maybe like 50 at peak. There are 50, 60. There was not very many people. Anyway, so they forced their way into the building. They didn't force their way. The door was left open, but they say the door was left open, and then they happened to force their way into the building. How can you force your way into the building if the door got left open so that they could get into the building? Yeah, it doesn't. If you use your brain, that doesn't make sense. Now, does it? That's actually in fact, it's not kind of, that is in fact, by definition, contradictory, or in other words, hypocritical. Whoops. Anyway, the only people who seem to get really uppity and emotional and in terms of action, so reactive, were the cops and security inside of that building, into that little lobby area. So they started shoving as aggressively as they could and pushing and punching people back, trying to force them back out the doors they were coming in. And of course, at that point, people are going to get animated and they're going to get upset. Their emotions are going to start to flare, and that's just a normal human thing. You do that, naturally, your primitive instinct built into all of us is going to happen a lot of times, especially if you're a guy, right? You're going to get aggressive. Not necessarily going to attack anybody or hurt anybody or fight, but you're going to get really close, and you're probably at least going to get very verbal and get really pushy and, push your way in. And against, resist, basically. That's what you're going to do. That's a natural instinct built into all of us. It's a form of defense. It's a natural instinctive response. It's part of the fight or flight, which is adrenaline, to fight back and be like, I'm going to fucking stand my ground. Because especially if you're adamant about something, you really passionately believe something, and it's something, or to make a point, bound with that instinct, there's nothing that's going to stop you. At that point, just about at least, you're going to stand your fucking ground. So that would be fight instead of flight, because otherwise you'd run away. That's why you call it flight. But it's not actually fighting. Psychology 101, I guess. But that set fact aside, the point is that that's basically all that happened. And they're like, oh, it's so bad, it's so evil, so dangerous. Oh. But, little regional, local incidents like that happened afterward. Going quiet again. Then January 6th, you have the insurrection. I fucking hate that. That's the last thing I talked about, too, I think, as well. Or either that was the time before, was talking about the whole supposed insurrection. It was the time before. It was a fucking insurrection. Get out of here. Like, come on, man. And plus, the mass majority of the people there were not these QAnons or these extremist attention whore assholes that were there, or even people posing as Trumpsters that were actually Antifa, Black Lives Matter people, or whatever. People who pose as both, again, clearly because they want attention. It's because the truth is the majority of them were not these extremists. They weren't violent or whatever else. And there's a lot of issues I have with the whole way that the media portrayed that, and how the story kept just randomly changing, and now suddenly there was more than one person who died, and there's tons of people that were attacked, and now there was suddenly tons of threats. But all this shit comes in like a week or two later. I'm sorry, no. And you can literally see step by step the evolution and the way they were slowly twisting it to that point. It's literally a gradual ascent into madness of this total fabrication bullshit. It's a self-feeding energy that people get into, where it starts to help them fabricate shit. And the worst part is they make themselves believe it in the process. And so a bunch of other people believe it. And then their emotionality takes over, and they're irrational, and that kind of shit happens. I don't know, obviously, what truly happened that day. All I know is from the live stream footage I watched through, and even the video clips that were fairly long from media and just people that were there themselves, or even people that were there as independent media, in other words, citizen media, I guess, right? They were citizens. They weren't there to support the intrusion onto the Capitol building. It wasn't any of that stuff. It was... They were just there to capture it because they thought it was obviously interesting, and they probably wanted to see what it was actually like. Maybe have it as an historical record for themselves. Maybe other people could find it useful. Who knows their motives. But I watched a bunch of that shit because there was a lot of live streams that people were doing via their phones or whatever else. There was a lot of the media that were doing live streams, and then there's people that were recording via their phones. There was people recording via the live streams, or via the media, where we're just recording rather than live streaming. The entire fucking thing, even before they moved to the Capitol building and then went into it. And obviously, yeah, there's a bunch of idiots who went and vandalized it. It's the most pathetic, weakling, cowardly riot you've ever fucking seen, because technically, by definition, it becomes a riot rather than a protest if you destroy property or deface it or whatever else like that. Once it's considered a violent act has been committed, then it officially becomes a riot by definition. So technically it's a riot now, because some people broke windows and some people broke through the doors. Okay, cool. Some people climbed up the walls and hung on the chandelier, if I remember correctly, or something like that. What the fuck they have a chandelier is dumb to me. It's opulence, because figureheads like power projection via material things for some reason. Anyway, yeah. So it's also stupid. But anyway, so then that happened. Everybody's losing their shit. Then it goes quiet, and I mean dead quiet nationally again. There's not a mass shooting. There's not a single shooting. There's not these big protests. There's not these big riots. Literally, it's just. It's the quietest I've heard the media be in years. There was nothing. Nobody was in the internet be for years. Social media, nothing. It was quiet. There wasn't any of this massive shit. It was just these, the loudest thing you'd hear is these, of course, SJWs squabbling with people who they disagreed with and thus thought were evil, terrible people who needed to be counseled or whatever. Cool. Yeah, you had a 2 or 3 people attempted to be counseled. Chris Pratt was the first one, I think, that came up, but they're in that silence. That failed miserably because, I mean, as usual, there's all these people who are like, yeah, we're Black Lives Matter, whatever. And this clearly proves that he's racist and he's a Trumpster right-winger, Chris Pratt, because he doesn't share with us political views and he doesn't tell us how to vote. It's like, therefore, he must be a Trumpster. He's evil. He's wrong. He's a cisgendered Christian white boy sexist. He has to be all the wrong, all these pejoratives. Zoe Saldana, who's a black woman, comes and to his defense and like, that doesn't make any sense, and no, he's a fucking genuinely amazing dude. And then all these people start calling her all these fucking racial slurs, including other black people, as a black woman, because she's defending a white person. Also calling her a sexist or whatever, and it's like, could you prove how fucking dense you people are more? How could you prove why so many are moving to be more conservative and right-wing, so Republican, than going left, including a lot of the younger generation? Even myself is like getting pushed further towards the right because the fact it's just like they're the loudest, most virtue signaling heavy, hypocritical people I've ever seen. Yes, there's plenty of those assholes on the other side too, but in comparison, there's no comparison to how many there are on the left, especially if they self-identify as a liberal progressive Democrat. Wow. Especially my age group. God damn. Anyway, I'm starting to get sidetracked again, and I was doing really good up until just short of 40 minutes, and now I'm starting to get sidetracked here and there and branching off. Let's try to get back on track. So, yeah, it's just silence, and then that's what that was, and he was the first one. There was a little bit of noise because they're trying to counsel him, didn't work. There was like 1 or 2 other people celebrities, I don't remember who the hell they were, that went dead silent faster than Chris Pratt did it, and it didn't attract as much noise. It just like was like, we start and we're done, because it didn't work, of course. Cool. But the point is, through that was the most noise there was, but other than that, it was like silent for like, I guess like 2 months. No, actually, I guess it was this month. So yeah, it was 3 months. 2.5, 3 months. It was dead silent. It was the quietest I've heard it in years. Maybe even upwards of a decade, media-wise and social media-wise. So any form of media, I guess. It was kind of nice. Then this month, we're 17 days in at the moment, and I'm recording this, that is, and like, suddenly there's the transgender bills that were happening last month and a bunch of other stuff. It sparks a bunch of debate, but the media is kind of keeping it quiet because they only want their narrative and their perspective to get out, which of course is the SJW one, or at least more inclined towards that. So, you're an evil, horrible person if you don't agree with us and that we should, transgender people are amazing or whatever. And then you have the slight lull, and then the war stuff started to come back up because one of those, in fact, I think his first executive order, or something like that. One of the first ones he did was ordering the airstrikes in Syria, I believe it was, or was it Syria or was it Iraq? It's one of the two. It was supposed the Iranian-backed rebels or whatever, which then, shortly thereafter, former or current Attorney General, I think it was, or somebody like that, somebody who had a lot to do with the observance and the situations with that kind of stuff, like watching and getting that intelligence, so some intelligence person, came forward and was like, no, actually they weren't Iraqi-based, and actually there was more Americans and American loyalists and helpers there in that place that they'd shelled and bombed, and then there was, airstruck, and then there was other places. And it was like, what? And then, whoops, that went suddenly after it was first shared on mainstream media. Really quiet. It just suddenly disappeared. And you don't get any airtime anymore. A little bit of silence. And then in the mix of that, and especially more lately, now there's been tons of debate and tons of talk about Davos, and so the World Economic Forum, and especially alongside of that, Bill Gates, and then of course the whole COVID vaccine stuff. there's a whole slew of European nations that have completely banned various vaccines from various manufacturers of COVID vaccines. The reason why is because of the fact that, especially in seniors, they're causing very, very high frequency. They're causing consistently massive amounts of blood clots to happen in the brain, which means they have massive strokes, or at least they have a lot of little strokes, especially on the second dose. And by the way, my grandma, who died recently, had literally, I believe it was like a day or two before she ended up in the hospital for the first time, because they found that she had repetitive small strokes. And then around the memory center, I believe it was, or just speech center. That was the speech center of her brain. I would call them schismic. That's not what they called them, because I know schismic to be the little tiny strokes that happen in repetition. But in less than 24 hours, she had 4 of them in a row in that same spot, the same general area. This is, again, like, I believe it was a day or two, if I remember correctly, is what they said, that she had gotten the second dose of the COVID vaccine. And it goes, she's 90, going on 91 this year. Actually, she had made it to, I believe her birthday was... But yeah, the birthday is in June or May. I think it's June. I think so. You said it was this month. I can't remember. It's somewhere within that vicinity. I can't remember exactly which month it was, but whatever month it was, it was very soon is the idea of the point. That she would turn 91. And so she was an elderly woman, and she had a lot of heart issues. She actually had, for the last few years, had at least 4 or 5 years, has had diastolic heart failure. And it's been slowly, progressively getting worse, no matter how well she's taking care of herself. And she had a history of a stroke at some point before. And that scar was still present when they found the 4 other ones. The marks, because there apparently leaves permanent marks in your head, or in your brain. So yeah, she had, like a day or two before, she had the second dose of COVID vaccine. And then conveniently, she ends up having 4 strokes in less than 24 hours. And then after that, they said that they were pretty confident that if they examined her again, which it wasn't safe to do anymore, for MRIs and stuff like that, they would find that she was probably still having a handful more here and there. So she was on her way out. But she was in there because of that. And then she had been battling a UTI, which is terrible for elderly women to deal with. Especially considering it really actually a lot of times leads to their deaths. So she had been battling that for I think like a week or something like that, and then she had pneumonia. But she had the pneumonia for, they figured, probably at least 4 days to a week before she got the second dose of COVID vaccine. So, but she had pneumonia as well. You compound all that together, that is a death cocktail. But yeah, so the point is that she did have the COVID vaccine, and so that does correlate, and we're pretty fucking sure that that's probably, at least to me and my mom, are pretty fucking confident that that's, again, probably what caused her strokes. And her blood clots to keep happening in her head, because that's what it's known to do to elderly people. So that's why they banned it in a lot of different European nations, which is the point I'm trying to make here with this point. Okay, cool. And on top of all of that stuff, and that problem and debate, that of course the government and because the puppeteers, the people who are pulling their government strings, right, don't want it to happen because they're the ones who own these big pharma companies and corporations who make the vaccines. These assholes, are making sure that they pull the strings so that the politicians of the government suppresses any of that knowledge, so that the general public doesn't know about it. And because if they did, less people would get it, and in fact, more likely, they would also have to stop and ban it at least the current forms, until they could fix it. There's also some other fucked up things that have been happening to some other age groups and people with it too, consistently in Europe. So that's why they've been banning some of the vaccines there as well. Because it's dangerous, in other words. And deadly. Go figure. Yeah, so that's been suddenly trying to get suppressed. But then there's this whole thing about the COVID passports, or now it's instead around the world. Globalism, after all, Mike's company. They want their blueprint to be not just COVID vaccine passports. No, they want you to have full vaccine passports. In other words, they want to prevent you from traveling outside the nation, or in some nations, like the United States, they don't just want that. They want the ability to even let the states decide if they will let you travel outside of your fucking state, or travel and go to school, or go to college, or go to the grocery store, go to a concert, a game, go to the park, take transit. They want that much fucking control over your entire fucking autonomy in life, to where they literally want to dictate that if you don't get every single one of your vaccines and all your boosters in on time, and it's on the record, on your vaccine passport that you now have, that you're not allowed to do anything that they tell you can't do now. You don't have the rights to be a free, autonomous individual living being that you are. Because you're endangering the public. No, you're fucking not. You know who's really endangering the public? You and the people who support the idea of trying to take away individual autonomy and rights and dictate what people can and cannot do. That's the danger. The endangerment to society. Not the people who don't get the vaccines. That's a fact, whether you like it or not. So they're trying to be a dictatorship again. They, like I said in the last one, right? Once they start to take away your rights, your freedoms, right? And you give it away for the fact that you're fearful, or that, therefore, in other words, you think it's actually going to save or protect people or something like that, or be good, then that means they've successfully fearmongered you mongered you into fear. So now you're fearful, so you want them to do something about it. Because of these dangerous people or dangerous things or whatever else, they need to take control, right? Okay. Then you're fearful, which means you're a scaredy cat. You're a coward. You got successfully fearmongered, which means you were also stupid because you're easily manipulated. You allowed yourself to be manipulated by fear, which is always, but through all of human history, all of governance, history of governance in the world, that is the number one fucking tactic all people in power have always used, is fear. Because fear is the best manipulation, a way to manipulate and control people's minds and program them, reprogram them even, into believing and doing whatever the fuck you want them to. So congratulations, you're a gullible, manipulative, or easily manipulated individual. Congratulations. Either way, the point is that, it's not actually, say, somebody like me who doesn't even have an updated Tdap. I'm actually like 3 or 4 years now overdue, I think, for my booster. And I refuse to get any vaccine of any kind because I am truly anti-vax and skeptical. I'm both. And that's my fucking choice as an autonomous living individual living being. And I know I'm not putting anybody in danger by not getting vaccinated, but whatever. Anyway, the point is, it's fucking stupid. Like, they make you believe that you think that somebody like me, therefore, would endanger so many people and probably have murdered so many people, which is, of course, a complete fabrication and lie. It's fictional. But they successfully fearmongered you into believing that. It's called you've been manipulated. Whether you want to believe it or not, you want to demand that you came up with it yourself? That too is part of that fucking manipulation and programming. That's how your brain works. That's how human brains work. Of course you're going to think that you did it yourself. You made your own choice. You didn't. You absolutely didn't. You got manipulated to believing that you did. And that was your choice when it wasn't. But I can digress about that too. So, yeah. Anyway, so the point is all this vaccine stuff comes up and suddenly They're trying to suppress it. But it wasn't working. Actually, if anything, it was further fueling the debates and the arguments and the fire about Davos, Bill Gates, the World Economic Forum and all people associated with that, and thus Davos, and thus the big pharma companies who make these vaccines and output them, and thus also all these people who control the world. People are starting to wake up to this reality that they really control and pull all the strings of the world. They even pull and control fucking politicians by strings, because the politicians are just their puppets. That's the show for us that they put on, because they're the puppeteers. They pull the fucking strings because they control everything around the world. People are finally waking up to that, especially with this whole Davos thing recently. They're like, holy shit, and they're seeing all these correlations, connections along with the vaccines and Bill Gates and all the shit that he's said throughout the years, and it's like, maybe I should be a little skeptical and distrusting of these idiots. Yeah, you should. It's fucking dangerous as shit what they're doing. They're trying to literally dictate and control everything, including everything about us and what we are able to do and not do and all this other shit. Believe and it's fucked up, obviously. It's cult. That's what it is, it's a cult. Societal cult. Personality, cult of personality, all that phrases. It's very true. So, with this point in place, they love to also cause distractions, which is also a form of marketing and branding. So what they want you to do, when they can't successfully suppress it, instead it keeps skyrocketing in the amount of people are debating about it, thinking about it, talking about it, questioning things. Suddenly now, the authority figures are like, we need a distraction. Produce something. The United States has a blueprint, a script they follow for distractions as well. Pretty much everything's a blueprinted script of theirs that they ever will say and do. When they need a distraction, especially in the modern day, the last 10 years, what is it that the United States government always pulls? Mass shootings. They love to immediately jump to mass shootings as fast as they can. They need a distraction, they will do mass shootings. And they will do as many as they possibly can have happen. Or at least they'll advertise as many, as in show it in the mainstream media, their mouthpiece, as much, their echo chamber, as much as they feel they need to, or to fully distract everybody and make everybody get up in arms and upset and angry and that's irrational about something else that they're irrational about. In this case, mass shootings, supposed racism and police brutality. Great. Now that you're all busy fighting and squabbling and getting all emotional and reactionary over that, now you're distracted from what they're going to continue to do and what they don't want you to see or hear or know about. That's what they do. It's called a distraction. The United States did that. I wish I fucking remembered what it was. I had an epiphany where I realized, holy shit, and all these direct correlations with what happened, what was said in the media and all this other stuff, and with the presidency and all this other stuff, right? Politicians, all this shit that was suddenly coming up and getting realized and like seeing all these connections, people were like, oh shit. And then the government, via their mouthpiece, their echo chamber, aka the mainstream media, goes, get rid of that. Distract them. But they didn't have their blueprint yet. They had an idea for what they wanted to do, but they didn't know if it would work. They didn't even know how to project in the media with the stories behind it. So, the first major mass shooting event that ever happened was Sandy Hook. As in, yes, that was a false fucking flag attack. They attacked themselves, in this case, not for war support, but as a distraction for all of us from what it was that I wish I fucking remembered at the moment. Damn. I know my mom's not gonna remember either, but I was talking about that with her, and that's when I had my epiphany, like a month or two ago. I think it was like 2 months ago. It was so fucking useful if that conversation happened right now. I even said that. I was like, I so fucking wish I was recording us talking right now. Holy fucking shit. You know? Because it was so fucking important, and it had all the fucking correlations. Perfect. Like, every piece of the puzzle placed exactly. The puzzle was fucking completed. Don't fucking remember right now. And of course, it didn't even start there. It started with 9/11. False flags, and then built from there. And then that led to 2011, I believe, is when Sandy Hook happened. Then all that shit, yeah. And I knew in that moment, it was the exact same, like, I guess, intuition that I had when I was 7 with 9/11. That everything they were saying was a lie. There's something fucking very wrong about this. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that there was something they were trying to hide that they didn't want us to know about. That was probably originally being talked about a lot, and therefore they need to bury it. And with the distraction. So bury it including in the front of our minds and what we would see and hear. So how about a mass shooting? They didn't have a blueprint yet. They knew they had an idea for what they wanted to try, and they thought would be a good idea, which was the mass shooting. So they decided to do this, especially considering if it's in elementary school, fucking even better. So they did that. The stories they first produced about that, just like 9/11, were very inconsistent, and they didn't really correlate or make too much sense. Then, about, of course, as usual, 2 to 3 weeks later, the official story breaks out. And now they officially do, because they had to do an investigation first behind the background of this 18 or 17-year-old guy. So they went into the background, and they did the investigation for 2 to 3 weeks, and suddenly the entire narrative changes. Now they have an entire backstory to back up why the shooting happened. He was very problematic in the head emotionally, especially because he was apparently fucked up as a kid going there, and he had a grudge, and yeah. And by the way, think about how many times you've heard and read that same fucking general line, whether it's worded, where the words are placed in different spots, but it's saying the general premise, or slightly different words, but still saying the same thing. Grudge, had some experience, negative experience, didn't get attention, whatever it was. Suddenly, now he's got to do a mass shooting. It's almost always a guy. And it's especially if it's schools. It's almost always a dude, some young guy, usually 17 to 20 years of age, actually 16 to 20 years of age, who had been there and had experience at the school and had bad experiences throughout his years, and that made him fucked up in the head, and therefore he had a grudge, and he was super suicidal, upset, and depressed, and so he decided to take it out on the school, and he calls it a mass shooting event. It's, again, a blueprinted script. So yeah, there's this whole fucking narrative they have with that too. So everything's based on a narrative, and everything that narrative has to do is just their basis, their foundation, their flooring, if you will, their groundwork for then how they orchestrate and build their advertising and their branding for it, and the way they project it and make you guys perceive it and everything. That's the entire idea. It's just a marketing scheme, is all it is. How can we market it so that people's minds in the collective masses of society, of our nation, will believe what we say happened, and what we say the background and the person was like, or whatever else, and why this supposedly occurred. And then especially if they can make it stick in your mind and make people keep talking about it, then suddenly, well, even better. Now you're distracted for longer. It's all about fucking narrative. It's all about branding that narrative, marketing that narrative in such a way that gets perceived and accepted by the masses in their minds in such a way that distracts them for a long time and makes them very emotional, i.e. irrational and illogical. They don't think, they just react. That makes, in other words, you very stupid and gullible. That's why people tend to keep believing just about anything they hear these days. Because everybody's also so fucking hypersensitive in America these days. So, go figure. 2 + 2 = 4. Who would have thought? So that's really the main point of this entire thing, is all of this is distractions, and all these distractions are formed around a basis, which is a narrative, and that narrative is all about branding and marketing to you, the average citizen of the citizenry, and part of the masses of society here in the United States, to believe whatever it is they tell you. And at the very least, at least get into arguments, talk about, debate, think about, let it sit in your mind in the front of it for a long time so that you're very distracted from whatever it is they don't want you to see, hear, read, or know. And of course, there's probably still fuckloads of people out in the world that refuse to believe, especially in the United States, that refuse to believe that. and believe that their best interests are held at the hearts of and minds and hands of these politicians, and that they really do care, and that they really do want to fix society, and blah, 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 blah. Hey, you're welcome to believe whatever the fuck you want to, but I'm just trying to give you guys some extra perspective and point out that this shit's fucking blatant. They don't even try to cover any of this shit up anymore. They haven't for years now tried to cover any of it up. They make it as obvious as possible without ever directly admitting what it is they're up to, or directly saying word for word exactly what they're trying to do or are doing. And without revealing what it is they're distracting you from necessarily. Sometimes they do, but they do it very indirectly through it or otherwise. The entire point is they're doing shit that they don't want anybody to know about. They're probably passing shit and laws that are going to fuck us over that they don't want us to know about. That's what happens a lot of the time. Actually, yeah, I think that's what that epiphany was. It's a part of that whole thing from 2001, obviously 9/11 onward, through especially 2011 Sandy Hook, had, I believe it was 2011, when Edward Snowden did the whistleblowing, especially on the NSA program, because that's what he was employee of, right? And specifically that of the American Patriot Act, which is, in other words, hey, we'll collect every single bit of personal data, every fucking move you've made, everything you've ever said, all this other shit, we'll collect it. We'll be able to also, of course, freely sell it without your permission, let alone we're collecting it without your permission anyway, and we're going to make an entire fucking profile on you and then put you on lists. And then watch you. It's going to be great. I mean, literally watch you, listen to you. Like, you know. There's a reason why a lot of these people, big technocrats of these big mega tech corporations that have so much fucking influence and money and everything else, power, will unplug their microphones. They'll put duct tape over their webcams. They'll block everything, and they'll unplug and block everything, and they'll literally even unplug every fucking electronic they have. As well as not and disallow their own children from touching the devices that their companies even made and are selling to all of us. Marketing is essential. They refuse to allow them to have it because they know it's not essential. You can easily live without it. It's not necessary. And it's dangerous. Because they don't want them to have collected information on them either. Bill and Melinda Gates, their kids, have always never been able to have any kind of a tablet or a mobile phone. That is a smartphone. Why? Because of the spying, because of the dangers, because of all the problems it poses, and because of the, again, the data collection and all that stuff, and tracking and filming and listening and stuff. Even if you have it turned off, it's never actually turned off. They're still using it. That's why, because they know it's a fucked up thing. It's not right, and you also don't need it. They don't want them to be subjected to this shit and the problems it causes. But they're the ones who fucking made it, invented it, and give it to us, and are still pushing it on us as essential and great and wonderful things. It makes you fucking wonder, why? Why is it that they don't do it? Well, I think it's blatantly obvious, but I guess it's up to the individual person to interpret and to see, like what to them it correlates as and what it means. Or whatever. Mark Zuckerberg, why does he always unplug all of his microphones? Why does he always try to unplug, and still a lot of times, even if whether he's unplugging or plugging in his webcams, puts duct tape over his webcams? Why does he do that? Why does he do that? Why does he not also use Facebook, by the way, which is literally what he invented and created and has out there and runs? Why does he unplug all this shit? Why does he put stuff over it? Why does he block them? If they really also, when you tell them not to do it, they don't do it, why would he do that? Why would he put duct tape over this? Just because he can, and he's a lunatic, I guess, because clearly you can trust what they tell us that it's not dangerous and it's necessary or good or for safety or whatever. Wait a minute. I mean, seriously, it doesn't take any brain power to, use your fucking brain. Weirdly. I guess that's probably not a good way to word it. I think you probably know what I mean, though. Like, in other words, it doesn't take you being intelligent to know how to use your brain and then use it. to, in other words, understand something so fucking simple and basic and blatantly in your face like that. But it is, again, up to the individual to interpret and perceive and understand and believe the way they do, and that's cool and great too, because autonomy is the best fucking thing in all of existence, in my personal opinion, and it's essential to life itself, and so to not have that and not have it protected in every capacity is the most dangerous and fucked up thing out there. Getting rid of individualism or individuality or uniqueness, getting rid of therefore our freedoms to be who we are and do what we want, that's the most dangerous fucking thing out there. And that's the road we're still rapidly throwing ourselves down, especially in the United States right now, let alone actually around the world, because obviously the global elites control all of the nations of the world. And it's just the branding and narrative is structured in such a way that it might vary depending on which nation you're in, how they run that nation and how they do things and how their narrative is formed, therefore, and how they brand it and market it to us. But it's all intertwined and interconnected in their grand scheme and plan. And likely it probably is something at least akin to, if not exactly the same as, that of the one world government, or the New World Order, whatever you want to call that. I would not be remotely surprised. And I definitely, anybody who thinks that it was just for a joke and for shits and giggles that David Rockefeller had commissioned and erected those guidestones for the New World Order down in just outside of Atlanta by 13 miles outside of Atlanta or something like that, to the southwest, I think. Ironically, there's a FEMA camp that's tucked just to the northwest of it, like literally practically Kidder Corner. That was put there too. It's like, it's a little on the nose, don't you think? And I'm just saying. Yeah. No, it wasn't a fucking joke, obviously. You don't just fucking do that as a fucking joke. Like, prank. Especially when you put it in such a fucking random place. They'd be like, well, let's just do it so we can see who finds it and how frequently it's located and seen. You do it because you want it to be seen, obviously. Especially if it's a fucking joke and a prank. As a social experiment to see how many people believe it. Of course, at that point, you're going to want it to be noticed and seen. You're not going to try to put it out of the way like that and be like, well, yeah, I'm going to put it 13.12 centimeters further than this specific rock that's set along the side of the state highway just to the southeast of Decatur in Georgia. That's just what needs to be done. No, I'm not saying that that's where Decatur is, and that's therefore the Georgia Guidestones are. In fact, if I remember correctly, Decatur, Decatur, I think is how they're supposed to say it, is located. I'm pretty sure actually itself is located to the southeast, I think, of Atlanta. Georgia. Whoops. Technically the truth, actually, considering where Georgia, the nation, is, actually, in a weird way, yes, it is actually technically, I believe, a southeast of Georgia at that point. But anyway, yeah, different story. I'm starting to ramble at this point. This is the longest one yet. There might be like one or two edits in this, but it'll basically be for like when I'm coughing or taking a drink of water. Other than that, it's going to be raw and straightforward. You get it all. Either that or I might decide to edit it and then get rid of the more branching parts if it makes sense. Well, but you know what? Fuck it. I'm probably just going to leave this entire thing raw so you can see the entire exact experience of how exactly this whole thing happens. And it's always one take. So, hey, and then you can get some actually insider perspective of how my mind tends to work and how it makes its progressions into various branching things. So it's like, oh, he's off topic now. Actually, I'm not. I'm technically on topic. It's just on a side branch. Because I saw a correlation, and eventually you branch out until you come right back to the main trunk. Square one again. Groucho Marx, how you doing? Animal Crackers. Yeah, anyway. So I'm going to shut up now. I pretty much got my points across. Yeah, it's it's a scary, effed up world we're living in right now, in the nation, but it's also, life is heavily thoughts become things in a matter of perspective. So who knows? Maybe we all can will our energies into a certain direction and way of positivity that will actually take us away from that, or at least stop the progression towards it. At least for us individually and personally. Who the fuck knows? I don't fucking know. Nobody knows that kind of stuff. The shadow knows. Words. Yeah. That's gonna be it for me for this political commentary for April. Yeah. The more you know. And this is technically an update video too of like, where have you been? What's happened? For those of you that don't actually look and read my freaking discussions page or check on it here and there. Because as I've said so many videos now, you need to pay attention to that. If you want updates, they might come really late, but if you want any kind of updates, that is just about the only place, especially the last few months, just about the only place you're going to get any kind of an update from me. So pay close attention to my discussions page, because that is where I post my channel updates and upload updates and dates and things like this. So please do not forget to keep your eyes peeled on my discussions page. So if you ever like, where the fuck did he go? Or what's happening now? Or like, why aren't we getting uploads? There's probably a post there, or about to be, with me updating you guys on what's going on. I even technically updated you guys, I believe, a few days before my grandma officially passed. I think it was actually I think she passed 3 days, 2 or 3 days after we came up and visited her. So like pretty much dead center between the day we found out that my brother had died and the way he did, and then, which was the 19th, and then today. Then when she croaked, which I can't remember when that was, I think it was the 29th. So yeah, it's like dead center between the two. But yeah, so I posted that there on my discussions page too. I basically gave you guys a less detailed but effectively summarized version of what was going on, what we expected to happen with my grandma, and thus I didn't know how much time it was going to take before I felt like I was in the right place, in a happy enough place to be able to produce more content, let alone especially when it comes down to political commentaries. Because again, I've mentioned this, I think the last couple of them, if not all of my political commentaries, although usually the beginning, not the end, although I guess maybe I did mention the end, not the beginning, I don't know. Either way, I've mentioned it, I believe in all of them, which is making the statement known that I, one, do this because my still sole patron at the moment, Al, who has a channel on YouTube, by the way, called Portland's Transport, and he's Al Your Palster on Twitter. He's a friend of mine, technically from Boston. Anyway, he is my sole patron. I do this because he specifically requested that, especially if I want to continue to receive his patron contributions, I should continue to give political commentaries. And I'm like, hey, dear God. But I'm like, because I literally am like, oh no. And my mom's like, yeah, that's actually not a bad idea. You'd be pretty good at that. Oh no. Was that her response? I'm like, God, that's not what I want to hear. Because I don't really care about, what I mean by I don't really care about politics is I don't like politics. It's all a fucking show anyway. You don't have any power, and it just fucking sucks. And all it ever does is, like Gabriel Iglesias Fluffy says, it just fucking divides. That's all it does. It divides and conquers. It just pisses off the masses at each other and everything else, and spurs hatred and all that other shit, and it's fucking exhausting. Shit. Politics is fucking stupid, and I like to avoid it. But at the same time, I do, of course, have political opinions and thoughts and perceptions and all this other stuff. Obviously. Even though, again, I've also mentioned before, I am a anarchist by definition, the original definition specifically, not perception, as in for a world without rule, governance, or authority. So no laws, no rules, no police, no anything. Just everybody for themselves. Everybody gets to do whatever the fuck you want. Life is the only one who divvies out consequences, which life always does. Inevitably make you reap what you sow, whether it's positive, neutral, or negative. depending on whatever you did. And it's a beautiful fucking thing at that point. That's why I think we were meant to be born like that. That's what we were created, if we were created at all. But you know, that's what we're here. We exist to live like, in my opinion. We were supposed to exist as such. We're supposed to live like that. That's my sincere belief. But therefore, I technically cannot be and would not be political, because you can't have anything political if you're in anarchy, or you're trying to bring anarchy, or you are therefore a true anarchist. So what I do is I, of course, always have my separate halves. Basically, I have my half that's an anarchist, which is truly what I am as a whole, but I set that to the side, so to a half, and then I bring up my political half to do these commentaries. Because, of course, again, I do have opinions, I do have perceptions, I do have beliefs about politics and stuff like that. So, of course, I'm also a naturally expressive, talkative, as you might be able to tell, person who rambles a lot. So, I guess it kind of makes for a decent, if not high-quality, form of podcast-style rambling of, like, here's what my perspectives on shit is. But another reason why it's kind of difficult for me is because I find it difficult a lot of times to be able to figure out what to talk about. Like, this last month and a half, 2 months, I've actually sat here and been like, I don't know. Since I last recorded the last public commentary for February, it's like, I do not know. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck to talk about. So I ended up deciding to talk about this today, and I was feeling it and naturally flowed. This is just what I felt like I was ready to talk about and wanted to talk about in this political commentary. I'm like, fuck it, let's fucking talk about this shit. So that's why I did that today. So that's ultimately why I do like doing it, but I am doing it because of that, and of course because, again, it's my most viewed things, by the way, as of this year, 2021. It's my most viewed videos consistently, is these political commentaries, which I find fucking hilarious. Was interacted with. So, obviously, Al's not the only one, but I digress. Anyway, I forgot what my point was. I'll probably listen back to this, so you guys will laugh your heads off of, like, damn, he's getting attention deficit at the end of this. Yes, I fucking am. I don't know what the heck my brain's done. It's just like, and we're gone. You're on your own, kid. Have fun. You're gonna need some luck. Well, here we are. Anyway, yeah, so that's why I do it, though. It's because of the owl request, and yeah, because you guys, like, people seem to view them quite a bit, and I get usually some decent interaction off of them, so I figured, why not? Plus, hey, here's the other reason why, is because the fact it's like an exercise for me, right? Because I find it very hard not to get annoyed, or like, I'm a very emotionally intense person, so like when I'm really invested in something, or when I really sincerely believe something, I'm passionate about something, in other words, I really am like immovable on something, because that's how much I believe it, or that's how much I feel about it, I become very loud, and I can sometimes be very confrontational and argumentative, and just like brick wall of like, you're not going to get through to me. It's my way, and nothing else exists, just my way. The way I see it, fuck you if you think otherwise. You don't exist anymore. Like, just go away. The only thing that exists is my perspective, because I'm fucking right, fuck you. I get super fucking analytical and opinionated. So because of that, it's like an exercise against that part of me, that half of me, my analytical half, because I'm like a half nihilist, half analytical, and of course they're contradictory, because they're direct opposites, so they a lot of times can get in confrontations. So weirdly and interestingly, since my brother died, actually, I've been the best I've been since I was stuck with my fucking abusive dad, which is fucking hilarious, because I know that's when it came up, was when I was stuck with him, going through all that shit and that trauma. And my brother dies, and like, been the best I've been since I obtained the analytical half. It's fucking weird. It's great though. Like, I'm not gonna say, well, it sucks because it took my brother to do it. It's like literally just like, with his departing of his energies, his negative energies, I'm just like, it's peaceful, it's quiet. I like it. It feels mostly balanced, and that's something I haven't felt until then, which is kind of sad to think about, but it's true. That's much of an impact he had. I mean, there's a lot of negative energy, but yeah. As much as I love the guy, there is a lot to hate about him. You really want something to hate. And it turns out, it seems like he despised that in himself, because it was really everything he hated and despised and he could not stand and he talked violently about was actually a reflection of who he was, which is especially fucked up and sad. But then that's even more torment he was going through his life. So at that point, can't blame him if he really did take himself out. Because that, and I know we and him were so mentally and emotionally similar that I totally understand the torment aspect and how intensely overwhelmed we get, especially because we're both very emotionally intense people, right? Literally, our emotions can completely consume us to where we don't exist, only our emotions do. And you do not want that. It is such a negative feeling. It is negative. It really sucks because it's only ever the negative emotions that take you over. It's fucking terrible. But totally understand that at that point. Because then he get this weird relief, like this. I say this weird relief. It's like a wonderful, indescribably immense Titanic relief that you and release that you would never have been able to have if you continued to allow yourself to exist in this form of human materialism. I guess if there is some other form of existence, you can't achieve that until you die. Basically. Is what I totally understand that, because there's a part of me, especially with this analytical half that came up, that I may never fully understand it unless that half, I can finally kick it permanently and get away. But the point is that that's one of the other reasons why I do this. It's because it's a very big challenge and it can be hard for me to do sometimes. But at the same time, it really helps me also kind of better gauge and understand myself and be able to read myself, especially if I go and watch this stuff back or listen to it. I can read my voice, my loud, how high or, how loud or I guess high and low my volume gets, how expressive I get, how much more gesturing I get, intense I get, I guess, and expressive and animated. I can read all these different cues of myself, watch them back and see how much better I did commentary to commentary, or how much worse, or what I need to work on now, or what I need to more focus on, or what's getting better or worse, or all that stuff. Basically, I can read myself and I can track my own progress on releasing that half of me and being able to come to terms with actually, honestly, being, hopefully at some point, if I continue to do commentaries of any kind, or podcasts, say, with other people, I would really badly want to become like a Russell Brand. The way Russell Brand is now, and has been for the last year or two, that's like if not literally a goal, like a major goal for myself in that regard, is getting rid of that analytical half so that I can become more like Russell Brand is. How we know him now today on his channel and on his podcasts and stuff, where he doesn't get emotional, he doesn't get animated necessarily, he doesn't get, he doesn't let any negative emotions or reactions happen. He's just very good listener, but he's also a very good talker, and he can do both very well, and he does balance them out. And basically, he's just a very balanced, calm, rational mind and individual now. That's ultimately where I want to be able to see myself and get myself to with this kind of stuff, this whole podcast-like stuff, this commentary stuff. That's my, in fact, I'm going to set it as a goal right now. That's where I want, and I'm going to make sure I get myself to. So I don't have to worry about any of the other stuff again. It's going to be interesting. But, it's just... yeah. Anyway. Almost 2 hours later. That's the longest I've ever gone on before. We're officially going to wrap this up. So, those are the two reasons why I do this. A third reason, which is associated with the second one, is actually... the same reason why I leave literally just about everything on my channel up in the first place. I even have my old channels with all the old content on those channels from even when I was a little kid, 13, 14. I still have up because of the fact that I want them so I can keep looking back on them and be like, look at me when I was then, look at me in this situation, there and there and there, and then just see all the different all the progress, I guess. So all the differences that are in between all of them, is thus all the progress I made, the ups, the downs, the adjustments, the adaptations, the differences, the sames, the additions and subtractions, the true progression, right? just see how everything develops and how I develop and my mind develops and all this other stuff my expression does, my communication does. It's acts as an archive, and therefore it's really cool to be able to reference this shit back. I still have my entire fucking, at least I believe I do, Twitter archive from at least my last account, which of course I don't have Twitter anymore, other than Dan's Storytime, which is where I write my improv stories when I'm really feeling it. I'll log in there and I write my improv stories, but it's not for interaction, it's not for actual socializing media or reading stuff or seeing stuff or interacting. It's literally just I write my fully improvised stories there, and then you guys get to enjoy them there, which is Dan's Storytime. It's just compounded. There's no space. There's no therefore underscore or anything. It's just Dan's Storytime on Twitter. So if you guys want to look at what I have there now and keep your eye there, it seems like anywhere between every 3 months to every year or so, I'll get back on there and I'll write another thing. It's a lot of fun. It is, again, 100% improv, so it's all literally off the very top of my head, like whatever the fuck my brain spits out is what I write. It always makes sense. It always correlates. It always flows naturally. It really is a proper story. It's awesome. It's like an entire world, character, development, building, and everything. All at once. It's fucking fun as hell, and it's amazing, in my opinion. And I think more people need to start doing that and or discovering that themselves. It's fucking, even if it's just discovering it in terms of somebody else like myself or somebody else doing it. It is incredibly cool to be able to witness and be a part of doing that, especially if you're the one doing it. It's amazing. So yeah, you can check that out. But side point. That's the thing I'm trying to say. So yeah, I don't have other than that, I do not have a Twitter account at all. So I do not associate anything on Twitter in terms of socializing at all. So my last account that I had there was Rump Roast. Originally TCB Gaming is what it was called. I started that in 2015. I shut that down last year, summer. So just over 5 years on that account. That is, I have the entire archive from the whole history of that. Nothing deleted or removed that I know of. And then I may still have mine from Chaotic Econet, which I had from like 2011 or 12 on through to 2015. I think it was May of 2015 is when I created the other one, which means I shut down that one. And I guarantee you I do not want to look at that archive at all. I was so much more vicious and reactionary and mean and negative in every way and cynical in everything that I ever was on Rump Roast. I had so many fucking arguments with people which I just didn't need to do, and they went on for literally sometimes almost an entire fucking day straight, just back and forth. True toxic Twitter shit. And I actually started the TCV Gaming, then becoming Rump Roast account in May of 2015 because I was trying to reset myself and basically be like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm officially departing from constant arguments. I'm just going to build my own little space here and express myself, and if people want to argue about it, I'll do everything I can not to argue, or at least not prolong it if I do end up finding myself in one, whatever. And I, overall, throughout the years, I did pretty good. I still did do that sometimes because it was kind of hard, but because I can be a naturally contradictory and not contradictory, but a confrontational person, very argumentative. And really because, again, of the analytical half, obviously. The nihilistic half wouldn't give a fuck about what I believe or think or what anybody else does. It would always be whatever, and it would just drift on like a leaf on the wind. What's my point for mentioning that? Right. Because that's going to function as archive, so I can look back at that if I ever want to in time. Likely it is. I'll have that if I ever want it, but I'll probably just end up deleting it at some point in the future. I could totally feel myself right now. I guess maybe it is also intuition of like, I'm just going to never look at it again and just delete it anyway. But yeah, so that's another reason why I do this as well, is because this way especially raw like this, I can actually look back at these political commentaries and see how I progress and how I've adapted or changed, or how much calmer I get, or how much more rational and less blah I get. Maybe even less branchy and rambly that I get. And then when about it seems it starts to happen. So, because that's bound to change over time, I would think, too. And maybe even go away, hopefully, at some point. But yeah. As he says, as he's rambling this ass off, digressing massively, being way too wordy to just simply say something that could have been said in far less words and take far less time. Meanwhile, we're now like another 10 minutes down the road later to just say that shit. So, I'm actually shutting up now as my voice cracks because I'm going through puberty for a 15th time. Because my voice hates... That's another weird thing I've noticed. Every time I start to do political commentaries of any kind, my throat gets really fucking dry and raspy. It doesn't matter how much water I drink. It does not fix it. It does not stop. It's as soon as I do it, this happens. I have no fucking idea why. I don't know if it's like I'm a lot louder and more expressive than I think I am. Because it seems fairly normal. Just slightly, definitely more expressive and animated, but I don't know. It's interesting. Anyway. I hope you guys learned something today, enjoyed it, all that good stuff. And, yeah. Oh, yeah. I am gonna probably just post this up raw anyway. Most, if not just about everything I've said in here is, I feel, at least to me, kind of important to express and correlate to the things I'm expressing in it, so it wouldn't make too much sense to subtract some of it. So I think I'm just gonna say fuck it. Put it up raw, not stress myself with editing it down and trying to figure out how I'm going to output it. Just give it to you guys as it is. So you guys get the full raw experience of exactly these single take commentaries. There you go. And being almost 2 hours, technically about 1 hour and 37 to 1 hour and 40 minutes, I believe it was, for the proper commentary portion of this. Well, actually subtract 5 minutes because of the beginning preface. So actually, I guess that would be your update. So I guess that would be... maths. Basically about 1 hour and a half of shader commentary. So at that point, it can actually easily therefore function as technically kind of like a cover for also March, because instead of taking 20 to 40 minutes, it took me 1 hour and a half, and that pretty much covers the length of 2 months worth of political commentaries, especially if I edited them down. So technically, I did do exactly what I had thought of when I wrote that update on the discussions forum of like, maybe I'll just do an extended one talking about something not too specific, like there's not too specific as in not some specific political incident or something or happening, but rather a general topic that could therefore span a long enough length of time that it would be able to account for 2, and therefore it would function as a cover for both March and this month, April. So actually, yeah, I guess this kind of does function as both, doesn't it? Who knows? But once again, I hope you guys learned something new, maybe gained some new perspective from it, new understanding from another perspective that you may not have had before. I don't know. And yeah, that's about it. Yeah, so hope to see you whatever the heck the next video or live stream or commentary, whatever the flip dick is next on the channel may be. Stay safe out there, stay fluffy. Have a great day now wherever you are. Sincerely hope you guys have high good vibes and have a great time out there in life and do what you want with it. Not let anybody or anything stand in the way, including yourself. And don't know how to live, really. So see you later. Thanks for coming around, and especially if you've listened through this whole thing, you probably have issues, but clearly I do too. So, hey, we're 2 P's in the Sane Asylum SKP pod. Super. Yeah. See you later. Goodbye.